I'll start off by saying I definitely wish we were playing today. I think that was everyone's goal and objective. And obviously we're sitting here and we're talking now. Looking at this year, I think about continuity. I think about injuries and how the role that they played. But at the end of the day, in this league, we feel sorry for you based off of injuries. You got to anticipate that, and we've been doing it long enough to know those are always going to be a factor. So those are never excuses. Those are just some things that I thought were challenges this year, and I was particularly proud of our group, coaching staff, our players, guys that stepped up and really took advantage of the opportunities that came from those injuries. I can go down the line to Veet and Bruno and Kobe and Mo and those guys experiencing injuries themselves. Like we've seen the comeuppance in Garrison and just a number of guys that I was really, really pleased with. And the coaching staff that has surrounded them and maintained a level of competitiveness. I mean, competing is a huge word for us, and that was something that I never felt wavered. And I really thought our group, regardless of the lineups that were out there, regardless of the number of different lineups that we saw day in and day out, was something that was really good, really positive. But now we're in this space where we'll take a little bit of time, allow the season to kind of get to a more neutral state, and we'll begin our process, and our methodology of how we're going to continuously improve. And that's just the way we're going to operate moving forward. So much to reflect on, but at the end of the day, we know we've got work to do. So with that, I'll open up with any questions.
Yeah, I was going to say part of that reflection might be looking at not just even the roster that you had this past year, but how much of it has rolled over the last 3 years maybe, and how many changes that you guys might need to make in order to have that improvement happen.
Yes, our group, who I love and trust, we're gonna take some time to really hammer that out. That process is a process of first just stopping, making sure that we're in a state of neutrality, and making sure that we're in a group setting to where we can begin to label and really dissect some of the key features of this season. And then from there, it's a discovery process. And from that discovery, now we put and implement a plan in place on how we're going to get better and how that roster will ultimately shape up going into the next season.
And how prepared do you feel that, if somebody approached you this offseason, maybe asking to be moved somewhere else, or not any specific person, but just in general, if somebody's saying that maybe the situation isn't necessarily working for me, how do you guys approach that and have those open conversations to kind of help everybody come out, I guess, in some way a winner?
Well, part of that is just in the forefront is always communicating with guys and having them not be caught blindsided, but communicating kind of where we're at in general. And those conversations, of course, happen amongst the league, and I think we're always, in positions to where we would know how to handle those situations.
The last time we spoke to you was after the trade deadline. You guys decided not to make any moves. Between that time and now, do you feel like you've learned more about this team, or you kind of already had an understanding to go into the offseason to make some of those decisions?
Some understanding. We definitely learned a lot. We're consistently preaching growth mindset, and so we're always on the lookout for opportunities to get better. And in order to do that, you have to be able to sit and obviously watch, and then have those discussions moving forward. And since then, a bunch of time has passed, and variables have changed for sure, and new data comes in, so you're always taking new data and trying to figure out what's it going to look like moving forward. So certainly a lot has been learned, not just with players, but the entirety of the league and where the league is heading and how different teams are anticipating and preparing for a new cap environment. I think that's something that we've been doing as well, but to kind of see how teams have positioned themselves for this summer is interesting.
What needs to change for you guys to be a championship caliber team? Because you guys have made, over the past couple of years, coaching changes. So at what point do you really just start to look maybe at the players that you have?
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening, and it will continue to happen. Just making those changes, we never want that to just be arbitrary. Never want to do anything that is whimsical, but well thought out. And, for us, it's kind of what I mentioned. It's about taking the time to reflect on this group and reflect on the areas in which we can continuously improve. And, it's not a question of like when, it's like a matter of, we'll always be doing that. It's the nature of our business, and that's part of my job, to lead a group that's going to have to do that.
So do you feel like there maybe needs to be like a big shift or addition to the team really to be able to take that next step?
I think we're going to learn that in time. I think those are going to be things that we're going to discover here in the coming weeks and months. The immediacy of the draft is coming up as well, so we've got to be able to navigate that while also continuously building out a roster and how we're going to construct that. But we're always going to look for areas to improve. Is it big? Is it small? At this point, it's hard to tell. I trust our group when we sit down and go through that process.
A common theme seemed to kind of be that, while this group may be a good group and they might like each other off the court, it just didn't seem like they could figure out how to collectively play together. So how do you, find that balance of maybe finding the right personalities, finding the right skill set of players to kind of help this team be able to play collectively well?
We are always looking to improve upon connectivity, selflessness. Those are two key themes for our group, and the type of culture and the type of personnel that we want in our environment. And in doing so, the way we prepare for that is by defining what that looks like for us in particular. And then whether it's, right now it's going to be the draft or getting into free agency or getting into trades or whatnot, you're always gathering intel and scouting different players that will exhibit those levels of character and connectedness and selflessness.
What's something, maybe how do you define that as far as the selflessness and the connectivity that they might display? What questions do you ask, I guess?
Well, I would define it as the move from me to we. And apart from just asking it, it's watching actions and how guys operate with one another.
What have you seen this season that gives you confidence that just Trae and Dejounte can work well together moving forward?
Well, those guys, they're incredibly competitive. There's plenty of moments where I can point to and say, like, hey, it looks really good right now. And you're always going to take those moments and try to figure out, okay, how can we continuously get better? And it doesn't just come down to those two, right? Like it's something where you're going to look at the entire team, and then like those are going to be a focus. And then we're also going to look at like, okay, what's the rest of the team going to look like? What's this roster going to have to continuously improve upon, not just them?
As you look at the defense from over the course of the season, from October to April, how did you see it grow or change or adapt, and what do you think it has to do moving forward?
Yeah, those are going to be that's a good question, because that's the questions we'll go into this offseason looking at. We'll look at the data, look at the analytics, we'll go back and we'll watch film, and we'll see what the various lineups that we did have, what were those groups doing, what were the contexts in which those certain actions were occurring. And I think from there we'll be able to have a clearer path moving forward on how we can continuously improve defense.
If you look at a basketball game 10 years ago or 10 years before that, styles adapt and grow. Mm-hmm. If you try to plan a team that's going to win in the future, what do you think is sort of the next step of evolution of basketball in the way that the game changes, so that you can sort of anticipate how you want your team to look as that question makes any sense at all?
It's a very nuanced and thorough question for sure. It's I think there are always going to be principles that are timeless. Size, length, athletic ability, BBIQ, things that are, of course, important to many teams, but important to us as well. As new information comes along, just in general, I'm always a believer that you're now responsible for that. So as the game evolves and teams get smarter and new data becomes available, and no matter what you're doing, you learn more about that, you become responsible for that. So now how are you going to take that to get better at your craft? And as much as we want to focus on physical features, because those are very important in this league, it's also diving deep into the intangibles and being able to put the mind around those physical features to bring them both to a point of getting better and improving. So there's always going to be things that you look at and like those are features that usually are successful in this league, but of course there's always outliers as well. So that's what makes scouting extremely tough, especially in the draft process.
I'm curious, I've heard you talk before about Hawks DNA and competitiveness and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Clint and Bogue in particular were talking about just issues they felt were going on with chemistry and maybe not an unwillingness to sacrifice. And kind of what does that say about what's happened with, in the players that have come in here and that you guys have acquired, that as much as you're putting an emphasis on connectivity, that seems to be an issue?
Well, I'd have to go back and look at exactly what they said on that, but I do know that we're always striving to get better in those areas. And certain character traits, if you can move from it just being something that's innate, like this is a person that's born more patient or more competitive, rather let's look at those as skills to be developed and putting players and people in positions to where they can improve upon those and practice those more and more. So when you look at the start of the season to the end, like, can we be more connected? Can we be more unselfish? Can we be more competitive? That would be how I would look at that.
I guess, so so it's not necessarily that our filter is we're going to bring in guys that have those traits already, but we're willing to take chances on guys and believing that they can become more sacrificial or connected. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's a good question. It's really, no, we do want to have that as a filter. I think there is a baseline threshold of which you can look at not just one or two different character components, but a majority of different things that we have determined that are important. And you're discerning how best to move forward with that and if they can enhance those properties going forward. So it's a bit of a both and right there. Yes, we're going to use that, and we're going to use that as a filter on who we bring into the organization, but then we're also going to use that in a way to create development plans for guys that are specific and customized.
One physical feature that can't be denied is just height and size, and having that on your team. How big of a focus is that for you guys moving forward to potentially add that to the team?
It'll be something we look at. It's not just going to come down to that. I think there's a number of different things that will come up when we go through our assessment stage. But yeah, being in this league, size definitely helps, and that's just the nature of the system in which we play basketball.
Given the circumstances of what is going to happen tonight with Sacramento and how that could relay a pick to you guys, how big is an impact of that pick coming to you this season in your plans, or do you kind of view that as more of a bonus thing, or something that you how big of an impact is that pick relaying to you guys this year part of your plan?
Well, the beauty of our group is we try to prepare for all scenarios. So to look at that, one, it's out of our control. Like, they're going to win or lose, and that will determine ultimately where that pick goes. So if we get the pick, right, what does that look like? How are we going to leverage that asset moving forward to build out our team? And if we don't get it, okay, we'll prepare for it next year, and it still becomes an asset for our future.
You have a bunch of young guys who didn't necessarily have huge playing time this year due to injuries and all kinds of things. How do you approach not only the summer but going into next year with Kobe and AJ, who was kind of in and out, played a lot more last year, Mo being banged up? Like, I know it's a lot of focus on the guys who will play more minutes, but the young guys who are already in the pipeline, how do you kind of navigate those guys?
You're right. Those guys have been in and out for various reasons, and I was most proud of just their resilience. Like, every single one of those guys went through a pit, and they came out the other side, I thought, better. Not that you ever want to have to go through those, but the way that they approached it, the way that they showed humility through it, and the discovery of different things about themselves in that process, I thought was great. So if you project out into the future, what we're going to continuously do with them is maintain that mindset, maintain the fact that there are going to be things that are not in your control, and you're not going to be able to prepare for exactly what they are, but you can prepare for adversity. So what tools are we going to give them through that? What habits are they going to have to add to their routines day in and day out towards becoming the best version of themselves? So early on, and this was, especially in this last draft, a part of like the character that we want in this group. It's not something that's perfect where all of a sudden like you're the perfect person. It's more about how have you responded to these situations before, because that gives us an opportunity to then project out how you respond in the future. And to have a growth mindset that those guys do have is really important. It's very important for us. Continuously improving is a common theme here, as well as the competitiveness and perseverance and just grit. And those guys showed a lot of that, and I'm super proud of how they did that. And I would bank on the fact that they won't stop doing that in the future.
What went into the decision around V and the conversion, non-conversion? A lot of talk about that at the end of the season. Like, how do you evaluate that kind of thing? And obviously, he becomes a free agent now. How do you sort of navigate that this summer too?
Veet had an incredible end of the year. Very similar to your last question about a guy's journey, different pit stages that they go through. I mean, he was here, then he wasn't here, and now he's back. And he showed us a lot of excitement towards the end of the season, and a lot of really good play. And it wasn't an easy decision with how we came to it, but leaning on our process and methodology and how we got there, I'm more than confident that that was the right decision. And really trusting our group on getting there. So love Veet, we want to see if we can do something for the future here with him. But a lot went into that. And a lot went into his game, and a lot of coaches spent a lot of time with him. The time that he spent in College Park with Coach Ryan and his staff and the group that was there all goes into that. So that's a great story today, and as he continues into the future, hopefully become a greater one.
Trey said that he, likes being here, but he also wants to win. How much do you see his future here being with the Hawks moving forward?
Trey's the ultimate competitor. He really is. Without a doubt, I know he wants to win. And, it never comes down to just one guy. Because as great as Trey is, he is a fantastic basketball player, all-star caliber player. He knows, and we know, that it's going to take more than one. So, we'll look at this roster and continuously build out, because we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We want to win.
Landry, the saying is that hindsight is 20/20. Just wondering, looking back on the season and knowing what you know now, are there moves that you wish you would have made, or maybe moves you wish you guys didn't make, or how do you kind of reflect upon the season like that?
The way I look at that is, you can always look back and say, I should do this, should do that, but there would be no growth opportunity if you always got it right. I think it's the shift from, if you can't be perfect, then learn from it and then progress and practice whatever it is that you learn from that. So I think we look back at seasons like this and any season, and instead of judging it successful, unsuccessful, I judge it as important. It's very important for us to go through a number of different things, adversity, the highs, the lows, and then taking the time to stop and reflect on, why? Why was there a success there? Why wasn't there success there? And then our commitment to excellence and commitment to getting better, that's within our control. And that's what's going to position us going forward for the big results that we ultimately want at the end of the day, because results are important, and we do want to win. But we also put a huge emphasis on the how.
Are there moves you already know you want to make? I'm not asking to name names or anything.
No.
Well, first, I'd just like to start, I was really proud of our guys this year, the way they competed, just appreciate the work that they did day in and day out to improve. Obviously, we'd like to be playing today, but like every season, this was a unique one. Trying to battle through whatever it's thrown at you and try to get better. And at this point, you're reflecting a little bit, and also wishing you could play. But as I reflect, as I mentioned, I'm proud of our group and the way we competed and the work that they put in. Secondly, it's been a really good year. Continuing to work with Kyle and Landry and develop continuity with them, and look forward to doing that throughout the offseason. And really also want to recognize Tony and his support and really his commitment to building, a championship caliber program and all the things that means, doing it, the right way, as they say, and just the amount of resources that he's been willing to commit to continue to build out, a very robust organization.
When looking at the season as a whole, is there anything that shocked you about this team?
Any season, there's all kinds of little shocks, throughout the year. I've kind of grown to understand that whatever you think you can anticipate, there's always something else. And that's part of, the process of an NBA season, is all those things, trying to continue to, react to them, respond to them, process them, and allow them to have the opportunity to make you better.
What do you think is going to be something that you and Landry and Kyle and everybody, what are the main points of emphasis that you see right now that you guys will probably talk about, not just reflecting, but looking ahead to what you want to do with this team as you get into the offseason?
Yeah, well, right now for me, the opportunity to just step back for a second, get away, myself, our staff, I think that's really important. And, when we come back, I'll look for, I'll whatever opportunity, whatever input that those guys want from me, I'm happy to provide.
When I talked to you at the beginning of last season, you mentioned that, it's maybe fair is not necessarily the right word that you use, but it's unwise to maybe judge the partnership of Trae and Dejounte in year 2 as it would have been to judge it in year 1. But when you look at, maybe they didn't have enough time together to work on things, but when you look at that partnership, what did you see, and maybe how can that grow moving forward?
Well, first, they're both excellent players, and I think anytime you're looking at a group and analyzing the group, it's important to not focus on any 1-2 people. That it is a team and it's collective, and that's the way that I look at it. And really love having the opportunity to coach both those guys.
If you look at the defense from, say, October to April, how did it change or adapt or grow, and sort of what are the next steps towards improving the defense?
Yeah, I think, any kind of big picture, well, offense or defense, as we split the game into special teams as well, there's so many factors that go into it, whether it be adaptation of what you're doing from a tactical standpoint to try to fit your personnel, evolution of your personnel. So it's a complicated answer, and one that we'll continue to look at and think about. And obviously, you always want to get better, and that's an area. There's a number of them. I'd be neglectful if I didn't point to other things too. But that's your goal in the off season, is to look at things critically and dig in and look for ways to improve. And it's actually, I think, as I mentioned before, for us to get away, I think is really healthy. And when you do come back, there'll be some of that, and also just the amount of time that we want to put into our players and the work that we want them to do this summer and the work that they're prepared to do, I think, addresses a lot of that as well.
Coach, we oftentimes ask the players, what have they learned about themselves over the season? I'm just wondering, as a head coach, have you learned anything, or has the season kind of reinforced anything you already knew about yourself?
Absolutely nothing, and way too many things to share with you. I didn't learn how to bake a cake. Other than that, you learn to prepare a lot of different meals and deal with a lot of different things, and that's the wonderful thing about this job, and also the most challenging thing about it is you're constantly learning. You really are. And I don't care how many years you've been in the business, or whether it's your first or your 10th, or any organization. Year 1 is always a unique year, and invariably year 2 is as well. And at least for myself personally, I'm committed to continuing to get better myself, and those are the things we ask of our team.
Coach, talking through players amongst the cycle, some kind of focus on the fact that injuries really impacted this team, and then other players have kind of said that every team goes through injuries, and so you can't really use that as an excuse. How do you kind of frame the injuries that this team faced this season, and how it impacted the type of year you wanted?
Yeah, I think both those things are true, and they can both be true. That every season does have challenges with injuries. Sometimes the timing of the injuries, not all injuries are created equal. You know, how long guys are out, who's injured at the same time. I know there's all kinds of metrics that try to measure that, and I think we're one of the teams that clearly was impacted. The other part of that, though, is, again, in building on the idea that it's part of it, you really want, to use any adversity, in this case injuries, to try to figure out a way to get better, whether that's a given player coming back. And the best example, right, is you break your right arm and then you have to learn to shoot left-handed. Just as simplistic as that. And I think that's true of the team. You're able to find different things out in those moments, and you never wish that. Hopefully we'll have less injuries next year. But that's part of the growth process of a group too, is kind of accepting that those things are going to happen and choosing to respond to it the right way.
I found it interesting. Clint kind of said at times he felt like maybe the winning mentality of the group maybe wasn't there. Bogey talked about he felt like maybe some guys weren't making the sacrifices needed and maybe even competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice any of that, and how do you kind of navigate that?
Yeah, I haven't talked to those two guys about that. I think, any team, our goal is always, to be as connected as possible, to compete collectively as much as possible, and I think those are things you just continue to strive for.
Do you believe if this year's roster was fully healthy that you guys would be playing later in the playoffs in a perfect world?
Well, as I mentioned before, I wish we were playing today. And you always want to play later in the playoffs. So hopefully that's something that, you can ask me again next year and we'll have a slightly different answer. Who knows where it goes. But I do think that, that's having those goals and those aspirations is great. I mentioned that. I think that's one of the things in working with Tony and Landry and Kyle. Tony's talked a lot about being a championship caliber team and organization, and as I said, the resources that have been committed to that, the work that's being done, the collaboration that's occurring, and that includes our coaches and our players, and that we all want to be connected in the sense that you alluded to.
To follow up on what Lauren was asking about Dejounte and Trae, their on-off numbers, when they're on the floor together versus when they're on separately, would suggest that they weren't when the team suffered when both of them were on the floor together. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to you, obviously numbers can say what you want, but in your opinion, kind of how much of that is the truth of their ability to play together?
Sure. I guess I could just reiterate, I really, coaching Trae and coaching Dejounte, as a coach, anytime you have an opportunity to coach a unique player, a player that is on that level that you really appreciate. And I appreciate coaching them both independently. And as I mentioned before, whether it's perception, analytics, whatever the measure is that anyone wants to use, myself included, to gauge a team and lineups and those things, I think it's, we're about that collectively. And I don't think it comes down to any one or two guys. That's something that is about our group.
What is one thing that's maybe going to stick with you throughout the offseason that this team didn't do as well that you would like to see them do better?
Yeah.
There's probably more than one, but what's...
I'm the kind of the sweeping, what did you learn, singular questions are hard for me because it's a lot more complex than that. And I appreciate the question too. If I get to a point when I can boil my life down into one thing that I can do better, I'll do it. There's so many little things, I think, and that would be the theme, I guess, that there is no one thing, that it's usually a collection of things. And those things at different points in the year, different things present themselves. And that's the challenge of the off season, is really to look back and reflect and analyze and see what those things are and prioritize them and try to figure out how to make them better.
And what's the challenge for you and the players to fix one thing, move to the next thing, and then know this is sorted out, we won't have to go back to this and we can keep improving?
Well, anybody that's tried to improve in anything, I think you understand that there's progress, and then there's slippage, and there's more progress. And there's so many variables that go into that. Sometimes what appears to be a step back, there may be a very very clear reason for it that you have no control over. So I guess I think the primary thing is to look at the things that you have control over and what aspects of it you have control over. And the ones that you don't, or the areas that you don't, you can focus on and try to move the needle.
Last we heard you mention about people getting away.
Mm-hmm.
What is getting away for you? Are you going to watch the playoffs?
It's finishing this right here.
What does that look like?
You know, I when I get away, part of getting away is knowing that I'm away and not thinking about everybody wondering what I'm doing when I'm away. So I absolutely appreciate that we're getting to know each other. You're not going to find out my favorite book, nor my favorite food. You know, for me, one thing that's tongue-in-cheek, obviously, but always laced with some truth. You know, I really, with my family, travel's been an important part of our lives, and you know, that to me is the best way, you know, to get some space and to, you know, take your mind off certain things. And it's not easy, right? You gravitate back to certain things. So sometimes it's, you know, traveling to somewhere in Atlanta. Travel means a lot of different things. So looking forward to that.
How will you navigate kind of this offseason? There's always talk about changes with players and rosters. How do you kind of navigate that as a coach? And would you like to see this same roster back next year, or do you think there are some slight adjustments that need to happen?
Well, this is, as I said, you know, I'm just really appreciative of this group and what they put in, and you know, the growth that did occur. You know, and when you look at that, you know, you're always trying to get better. You know, you're always trying to improve. Whatever, you know, small changes can occur, larger changes, some of that stuff, you know, is not things for me right now to try to focus on and figure out. When we come back, we'll look more and more and try to figure out how to get better, really, and you know, it's that simple.
How much involvement do you like to have with like the draft process, free agency, things like that? Or are you kind of more of a, once the team is put together, then you know, then I kind of step in and deal with those things?
Well, I think those two questions are similar in some ways, and I think, you know, as I said, you know, having an opportunity to work with Landry and Kyle and the processes that they have and that we have, I think are really important. And I also think it's important to be very methodical as you approach those things, and to the extent that, you know, I can contribute in any way, you know, I'll do that.
There was a challenging stretch in the middle of the season.
Which one?
Okay, but I think at the time you said, you know, it's tough because we're a small team. In your collaboration with Kyle and Landry, is that something that you want to have addressed?
There's so many contingencies associated with that. You know, I mean, we were small the other night, but Jalen was hurt, and so is Onyeka, and so is Sadiq. So, again, I think that the main thing is you want to get better. And whatever that looks like, as I mentioned, I think, you know, we're going to be really methodical about that process and, you know, approach it from that vantage point.
How would you evaluate Jalen's season and the strides he made?
You don't want one thing?
One?
I can give you a lot on Jalen. I think he had a terrific year, you know, and he was a guy that, you know, dealt with some things that I don't think he could control, you know, as far as, you know, a couple of those ankle injuries, you know, especially I'm picturing the one where he got upended up at Washington, which was when he broke his wrist. And then obviously, but, you know, one of the things he did last year is he really worked, and he worked on certain things that were areas where he wanted to get better. And, you know, I anticipate him doing that again this summer, and it kind of goes to that same theme about, you know, just perpetual growth. You know, as Jalen moves forward in his career, I think he's someone, because of his mindset, that we'll see, you know, continue to improve. Last year, there was focus on his skill work, his ball handling, his passing, his shooting, and there was also focus on his health, his body, and the health performance side. And I think we saw strides with both of those. Even, when he did sprain his ankle, how he handled the treatment and how he got himself back. And obviously the biggest thing I think for him, and it's nuanced, is because of his feel for the game. He has so many different situations where he has to read what the best option is. And you're not always going to have a clear, this is the best option. There's a continuum there. And this is a high percentage shot, this is a higher percentage shot. There are so many things that go into it. This is a good pass, this is a better pass. And when you have someone that's able to make plays like that, there's a layer of the game that unfolds that you have to prepare yourself mentally and physically to be able to make all of those decisions in a really efficient way. And I think he'll continue to get more and more efficient and play better and better defense.
Coach, you mentioned...
Did he say that? Did he say defense? There's your one thing.
Coach, I was curious, when you say building out a championship caliber team the right way, I know that's, mostly Landry and Kyle and the front office's job, but from a coaching perspective, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's things that I think I've emphasized since I got here. I want to see us play really unselfishly. I want to see a group that, is connected. You see that on the floor. I want to see a group that competes, through everything. And the resilience that you have to do all those things, there's a component of just perseverance that's required, in this business. That's important to when things aren't going your way, because that, as sure as we know, that's the one thing we can count on. So that you have to be able to persevere and really continue to commit to those other things, being unselfish and competing and being a connected group.
How do you teach that? Bogey mentioned it, Clint mentioned it, that kind of the toughness was lacking, the resilience. How do you kind of teach that and develop that over the course of the year?
Well, I think we were a really resilient team, to be honest with you. And how you define toughness is a lot of ways, to do that. To the extent that you do something over and over again, it becomes more and more a part of just what you are and, who you are and what you do. And, I think all of us need to bring that ourselves, and then collectively, that's the connectivity that I'm talking about, that, you raise your level, as a group, because you're competing for one another. There's times when you might, want to stop when you're on that third lap of the mile, whatever it is. But oftentimes, if you're, playing for something bigger than you, for a group, that you do find more of those things that we're talking about. These are subtle things,
Trey, when you think about the goals that you guys had at the beginning of the season and how it ended up stacking against the reality, just what was the hardest part about going through this year?
It's never easy whenever you don't get to where you thought you could have been, or playing until you thought you could have been. But obviously we had a lot of injuries and things not go our way, and it's part of it. So you just gotta face reality and then be better next year.
As far as what Coach and Landry have just kind of talked about with what they'd hoped things would work out as far as internal development and this team growing, kind of what did you see from everyone as far as they've learned and grown this year?
I think a lot of guys got better. I think a lot of guys, a lot of guys got their first opportunity this year. You think of Jalen, Sadiq before he got hurt, was put into a big role for us. And Beat coming in, playing a lot of minutes. There's a lot of guys that got their first real taste of the league this year and a lot of minutes. So I think a lot of guys got better too. So I don't think it was a failure in that way. I think a lot of guys did get better and got a lot of experience and things like that, and it'll help everybody moving forward.
Trey, what did you learn about yourself this season, or what did this season kind of reinforce what you already knew, especially going through injury and surgery and all that?
For me, I didn't think I learned too many new things. Obviously, I know you can never take a day for granted. Obviously, it's my first year. I've missed this amount of games, so and it was from a freak play. So just understanding. I mean, I already knew that you can't take a day for granted, but or a game for granted. So, but missing the amount of games I did this year just makes me realize it even more.
When you look at Quin's first full year, and you look at the defense as a team, in what areas did you progress and make growth, and in what areas do you think there's still room to grow?
Yeah, I think we weren't as consistent as we needed to be on that end. We're always, since I've been here, we've been a really, really good offensive team. And defense has been the side that, has been there sometimes and hasn't. So I think even this year we had times that we did really well and then times that we really didn't. And that's why our record showed the way it did. And you can't put, all the blame on Quin because he's the coach. He ain't out there playing. So the scheme sometimes works and then sometimes it doesn't. But at the end of the day, we all can be better on that end and give him more effort and things like that. But I think it's just sometimes it's just the matchups too.
How was your finger? How did it feel the day after, especially after you played without the brace in the second half?
Yeah, it felt fine. It felt fine. I think the brace was just more for caution, and the doctor wanted me to have it on for caution reasons and making sure it didn't re-injure itself. So I was playing, and it was fine after I didn't play with it after that half.
Besides injuries, what do you think is lacking or needs to be added to make you guys more consistent and just get out of that play-in tournament?
Oh, that's not my job. I'm a player. I let Landry and everybody else up top do all that, handle all that. I just gotta continue to get better and focus on the things that I didn't do well this year, and things I did do well, continue to do that and get better at that over the summer. And I can control what I can control, and that's all I'll focus on.
There will be always some talk at the end of a season about maybe changes that need to be made and maybe movements. Do you want to be here next year? Do you still believe in this team that they can be a championship team down the years?
Yeah, every year teams are different. Obviously, I want to be here. I want to be here, but I want to win too. So, obviously, I've said that since I've been here. I want to be here. I want to win championships here and do that. But I want to win. So, that's pretty much all it is for me. That's my motto, and that's been me from the beginning.
When you say I want to win, though, do you believe that can be here with the Hawks, or do you believe it's somewhere else?
No, I believe it can be here. We gotta make it happen.
You and Jalen have become pretty close over the last couple of years. How nice was it to see the big leap he made, and then kind of what was it like for you two as he was hurt a lot this year and kind of had to stop and start so much?
It was great. It was great to see. Obviously, like I said, this is his first year. He got to really play, and obviously played really well when he was out there. But it's tough because you didn't get to play as many games as we all wish he could have with injuries, and that's just been like the tell-all since I've been here. So a couple of good players on my team every year go down. This year I was one of them. So it's tough. Hopefully next year he doesn't have any of those ankle injuries, and I'm gonna try to put him on some of those ankle braces I got. So we don't have to see that anymore.
If a player talks to you this offseason and wants to know more about this situation here, what would you tell him?
Say that again.
If there's a player who's looking for a place for next season, and he talk to you, what would you tell him?
About here?
Yeah.
I don't know how much I can talk. I don't know what tampering and what's not.
I don't like that, but you got a conversation that says what's happening in Atlanta.
Yeah, obviously, I'd let them know that they came here. People don't understand. I don't mind. People may think that I have to feel like I'm the best player on the team or first option. I'm not that way. I've never been that way. So I'm just a guy that's trying to get everybody involved and win the game. And I know when we win, everybody eats. So that's just been my motto since I was in high school, college. So being the best player on my team doesn't matter. Being the second doesn't matter. I just want to win. So if I was telling somebody that's probably what I'd tell them and let them know that they came here. They're going to have a point guard that's going to get them the ball and make sure that they're in the best positions for themselves and for our team to win.
against Minnesota, I think you hit one of those one-legged sort of three-point floaters, and then I think you got fouled on one, and against Indiana. Is that something where you were just trying to have a right to left move with your hand injured, or do you think that's like a viable shot moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm about to add moving forward. I worked on it a lot this year. I think it's something for me where guys can't contest my shot while I'm coming off the screen, and I'm able to kind of shoot on the run and shoot kind of like a longer floater. And I mean, I can shoot floaters really well, so I think that's something I can add to my game.
You referenced that you're not the GM, but do you like, I mean, will you talk to Landry and them and just say, hey, you know, what about this, what about this? I mean, do you like giving ideas, or do you just like to be the player?
I mean, I talk to those guys, and if I'm brought a question, I mean, I'll answer it. But I mean, I don't focus on other guys' contracts and what they have left or who we trade for us and all that stuff. Like that's up to them. And I mean, if they come to me and ask me questions, obviously I answer them, but I'm never going to go to them first and tell them what I feel like we need for our team.
Do you feel like this is like the hardest or most frustrating offseason that you're going into, just because there are so many questions and you guys are kind of in the same spot, it feels like?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely one of the toughest. Probably this one after my first year, when not knowing what the league is going to be like, and coming in with a lot of irrational confidence, thinking we were going to make the playoffs and things like that my first year. So after that summer, and this is definitely tough because obviously we have expectations now, and when you don't reach that, and it doesn't obviously make the fan base happy, but it obviously makes us unhappy too, because we set our expectations high too. So it's not a good feeling, and you try to go in the summertime to work on what you need to make sure it doesn't happen again.
How long will you take before you kind of get back and work on what you need to get to the next step?
I'll probably take a couple weeks off, make sure my hand is back to 100% before I start doing anything else. I don't want to have to use my buddy tape or making sure that these fingers are together when I'm working out again. So probably give it a couple weeks and then right back to it.
You've mentioned before you wanted to be on the Team USA team this summer. Is that still a goal of yours for 2028 when it's here? Just what do you think of the roster that they have?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard roster to make. I mean, to be honest, I kind of like what Kyrie said about it. Like when I was a kid, watching guys like him go against Kobe and all those guys, and felt like you had to kind of, compete and go up against each other and see what roster fits well. Obviously, guys probably knew who was going to make the roster regardless, but going out there is, like I've always said, like I respect the guys before me. So like I didn't necessarily, know 100% if I was going to make it or not, or even believe I was going to make it. But having the opportunity to be out there around those guys and learn from them for 4 or 5 days and compete with them was something that, as a player you look forward to, especially some of us that have witnessed as fans from kids watching the guys go through that as kids. It's a different process now. It's like they just pick it, but that's okay. It didn't work for me this year. Who knows in 2028 where I'll be in life, so we'll see.
Trae, I don't know if you saw, but Lou Will was talking about you recently, and then Rondo's also mentioned you and talked about like the pressure you've gone through and just how you're able to kind of carry this franchise. What is it like to have players who have played with you and retired players say that kind of stuff about you and support you that way?
It's really good to know and good to feel. Obviously, like those guys, they know me a little bit more personally than a lot of other people do. So, and they've been in this locker room and seen behind the scenes on what I've gone through and what I've had to deal with, and so they know me more than a lot of people. So it's cool that obviously they show love and sometimes mention things that I just let it slide and don't necessarily mention. So it's cool to have those guys around supporting me, and I know they got my back.
As a player, what do you think is needed to have a championship caliber team?
It's a lot of things that go with it. A lot of people don't like to admit it, but there's a little bit of luck that goes into winning a championship every year too. Being healthy isn't the easiest thing in the world. A lot of teams go and deal with it, and usually the teams that win have a little bit of health luck too. but you need a lot of things. I mean, you need a lot of things, and I don't think we're far from that. But you definitely need a lot of things and to go your way too. So that's pretty much it.
You said I want to be here, but I want to win too, and I hear you saying like winning is paramount for you. Can you just elaborate on how much that means to you to be on a winning team, and maybe the frustration that it hasn't happened here yet?
What do you mean? What is your question? I'm sorry.
Like it seems like for you, above all else, you want to be on a winning team. Is that a reasonable thing to say?
Yeah.
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 Trey, what's the podcast experience been like for you this year, especially like going through the season, you know, carving out that time, getting guests, and just kind of expanding that part of you as a person?
It's been fun. It's been cool. I mean, like I was telling everybody, I'm not like Draymond. I ain't about to be doing it every day. But I will do it every now and then. I'll do it a couple times, maybe a month. But yeah, I mean, next year I'm gonna have a lot more guests on. I think this year we're doing some trial things and see how people liked it, and a lot of people have. So probably next year doing some more things, and may have some other celebrity guests, and not just hoopers. So it's gonna be cool, and we got a lot of topics to talk about.
I know you talked about that first year, you kind of were maybe surprised how hard it was kind of to win in the league. But at this point in your career, are you kind of surprised that it's still kind of this hard to win?
I'm not surprised. I kind of know. You kind of know what to expect. You kind of know when you're missing 3 of your starters and you're down a big bench player, how tough it is to win. And I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into winning. So a lot of things don't necessarily surprise me, but anymore about that type of stuff.
Will you watch the postseason?
Yeah, I mean, I always do. They was watching me when we were on that run, so I expect to go on another run and people watch it again. So I don't hate like that.
As a player who loves winning, what does it feel like to watch the postseason and not play in it?
It hurts like hell, right? It hurts like hell. That's why I feel the way I feel. So when you I don't know if I didn't feel, I mean, that experience and going the way we did, if I feel that I would feel the same way I do now. But after going through what we went through, obviously the expectations are higher, and for not only the fan base here, but for me myself. So I want to get back there. I want to go further. So that's why I feel the way I do.
Do you feel the pressure of the city and the fan base wanting a championship and wanting to see you guys be so successful?
No, I don't know, because nobody's expectations are higher than me. Nobody in the city of Atlanta's expectations of our team is higher than mine. So, no, I don't feel it, because, to be honest, I'm more mad and upset than anybody else, because we didn't reach the expectations I had for our team or our team had for each other. So, regardless of what everybody else thought we could have done.
Bogey, when you reflect on where you guys started this season and maybe what the expectations were to kind of what the reality shook out to be, what's one of your biggest takeaways?
I'll say not successful year. Definitely we was aiming for higher goals, but that's how the sport works sometimes, you know. We didn't figure it out. You know, I'm just happy, you know, that everyone put a lot of effort into it, you know, whatever that means, you know, to everyone personally. But I know a lot of guys were working hard. Yeah, it didn't fit together. We didn't play together. At the end of the day, basketball is team sport, and we couldn't figure it out to win games. But a lot of guys had nice seasons, you know, and on top of that, we had a lot of injuries, you know, so difficult year for all of us, but we got to move on.
Bogey, at the beginning of the season when I talked to you, you said you wanted to improve your defense, especially because from the previous season, guys have been going at you and you think teams were kind of targeting you. How do you feel like you did defensively over the season?
I think Quin challenged me a lot, you know, starting from last year. I felt I improved a lot, but it started with working on my body, you know, and be ready physically ready. That was like one of my main issues after the surgery 2 years ago. I was kind of getting used to it, you know, so now everything is good. I feel like I never felt like this in my life, honestly. So I'm just happy that, you know, I'm going through that phase as well. And I'm happy that I improved my defense this year.
What do you hope to kind of work on for next season and taking that next leap? I know when
Yeah.
you're in the league as long as you've been, and sometimes it's hard to find those things to kind of take that next step, but what is it for you?
To me, I feel like I should be more efficient, like personal goals, but also, you know, like work towards like team communication and team stuff. It's really important to address some things maybe earlier in season and something that you see, and not just, okay, let's wait a little bit, it might change, blah, blah. On as a personal thing, probably efficiency, watch a little bit of tape to see where did I miss a lot, where should I make other decisions, and, you know, probably communicate more with everyone.
What sort of communication things do we should sort of
Take more like, you know, I don't know if I'm veteran or I'm young, you know, I'm in that phase right now, so that's what I'm talking about. Like, I should take that veteran role a little bit more, and you know, when it's time to be a young guy, switch up and be a young guy as well. And if you know what I mean, like, you know, just talk more, just express your feelings and what do you feel about the game, what do you feel about the team, and that's it.
What does it mean to you to have broken the single season 3-point record?
I mean, it means a lot, honestly, all these years, you know. I never tried to break the record, but when it's funny, all these years you're working, you're constantly improving your game. You know, I came here with, you know, an opportunity to play the game that I love, you know, and I was hoping for a better role than I had in Sacramento. And, you know, now I broke the franchise record in 3 points, which I never thought I will do honestly, but it happened, you know, and I think everything mattered, you know, my teammates, coaches, you know, fans, you know, arena. I love to play in our arena, and, you know, I see that as a bigger picture, and like I give credit to everyone that it's part of success.
You mentioned the next step you'd like to take personally. So on a team level, what would you like to see to have more success next season?
Buy into the roles, you know, and more sacrifices. We didn't sacrifice enough, you know. I feel like in my experience when I play for the successful teams, and it's not necessarily like winning a championship, but just feeling good overall. Because you can lose the game, but, you know, there's a ways that you lose, and I feel like everyone sees that, the energy and all that stuff. So yeah, sacrificing more for the teammates, and doing the little things that matters for win.
What does sacrificing look like, I guess? Like, when you mean that, like, what is that?
It's like when we all practice all these moves and all the stuff, you create the habits, and then there's stuff that, you know, somebody tell you, hey, do it this way, you know, the other way, that you don't like to do it. And that's the sacrifice. You gotta do it. That's it. On both ways, defensively, offensively. Sometimes we are too locked in on ourselves and individual stats or whatever, and we compete with each other. And there is a healthy competition, you know, but it could be unhealthy too. So you have to know the levels of it.
So it's fair to say maybe some players sacrifice more than others, maybe, or not consistently.
It changed, you know. When you play good, then you want to sacrifice more. When you play bad, oh, I gotta get to mine, you know, and that's how it works. But if you have maybe we don't value as much like little things, like good defensive plays. You know, we all want to score. We all want to have points. We all have, you know, there's NBA is a big league, you know, big marketing, a lot of money. So you got to be able to handle all of that, you know.
So you won't necessarily have a ton of time to take some time off with the Olympics coming up. Just how much time will you be able to maybe rest a little bit before you get back to training with Serbian team?
I mean, I'm kind of already motivated, you know, for Olympics, because it's a special event, special thing. I don't think we will ever see those type of players together, you know, representing the USA and competing. So it'll be really fun to go out there and compete against them. It's going to be a different game, probably, but I'm looking forward to it, and you know, I got to get ready. Got to stay ready.
What's it like? You went to the final of FIBA last year. You see the U.S. team that's been assembled. What's it kind of like for you, like as the excitement builds and like looking forward to like, Serbia? Obviously, is going to be a contender right there with them.
I mean, we can't tread nobody, especially, you know, Olympic team, USA, and you know, 2 summers ago we had the goal as a national team. We had a goal to qualify to the World Cup. When we qualified to the World Cup, we had a goal to qualify to Olympics. It's always like that. Constant chase to qualify somewhere. Now when you're in Olympics, this is like you fight for medals. So this is like main event, right? So I'm just excited to be a part of it, honestly, and I'm looking forward to get together with the guys and have fun.
I'm curious, you mentioned sacrifice and those sort of things, and I've also heard other players saying, like, you know, it's a good group, and are those kind of two different things? Or like we all get along, and you know, when we're on the bus, you know, it's a good group, but there's also this other matter of, are we gritty enough? Are those kind of two separate things?
I don't
like
think
you can all get along and everyone's happy to be together, but there's also the other matter of, are we doing all the things on the court?
Yeah, it's, you know, we players, we don't build the teams, you know, like we're in a locker room. We have to find a way to, you got to be professional, you got to be a good teammate, you got to do all this stuff that, you know, the team put you in that locker room to, you know, so that's all what it matters. That's how I'm here. You know, I wasn't doing like, I don't know, some highlights. I think all basketball world people, they like me because the way I competed and the way I wanted to win, you know, and the contribution I was giving to the team. So that's why I see this stuff, you know, and I had to say it.
Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you, like a couple weeks ago or something, I saw you tweet about a correction for how to spell bogey.
Oh, yeah. It happened too many times, right? It happened too many times. I had to tell him. I don't know who was it NBA TV or something? I don't know.
And the NBA.
Yeah, I have to correct them, you know. It's time. 7 years. They could.
So for the record, for the people, tell them how to spell
B-O-G-I. Simple. Bogey. B-O-G-I. Right?
Yes,
did I spell it right?
That's it.
Maybe I was spelling it wrong a couple years ago.
It's your name. How do you want them to spell it?
Yeah. Maybe it was my spelling.
Is that kind of toughness, you talked about it, CC talked a lot about it, and the sacrifice, is that something that is just like a team identity thing that y'all have to get together and say, you know what, we're going to be a little less flashy, but we're going to be tougher, and that's how we're going to win more games? How do you develop that in a team?
It's hard because you practice to win, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean if you practice more than others, you're going to win. You know, it gives you more chances, but you have to believe. You have to believe in the work that you're putting together, and you have to build the chemistry. I'm a big believer in the chemistry between the guys, you know, and we didn't have that. You know, we just didn't have it. And you know, at some time of the season, it was I can see like it was hard for a lot of us to find that extra motivation, because you need that extra motivation, you know, to win those games at the end of the fourth quarter, or you know, because we can all get to the fourth quarter and tight score, you know, but now like it's that time of the game, you know, you gotta win. We gotta do what works the best for us. So we just didn't have that. And it's unfortunate.
Does that need to come from the coaches, the players? Like, where's that motivation?
It's not one guy. It's not only coaches. It's we're people, you know. Sometimes, you know, we can't get along, and sometimes, you know, I have experience of, you know, not getting along with the guys, but you still gotta be a pro, and when you step on the court, we don't have to talk. We don't have to say the word to each other, you know. But when we step on the court, we gotta do the job, you know. So it's all part of experience as well, you know. I don't know how many of the guys they had that experience, you know. In Europe, it's a little bit easier to coach players, I think, because I feel like media here and everything that is happening, it's kind of all lights is always on everything. Like, I don't know, when I had beef with the coach, like we have beefs like every 5 games, but because I stood up off the bench and it was that moment and camera was there, it was a highlight, you know. So sometimes people overreact because they see and they only see the highlight, but you know, we talk for 2 years. I talked with that man for 2 years, and it's normal, like, to have these type of moments. And you know, I just think just having that pressure from outside, it affects a lot. You know, your decisions. Sometimes you know, you don't want to do it because even if it's good for your team and it's good for everyone, you don't want to step over because it looks bad, you know. But actually, it's good. You know what I'm saying? So we didn't have probably a lot of these moments.
When you say like not getting along, is it just kind of like maybe you don't get along like playing style with each other? Is it more personally like you don't get along with each other? Or is
there is no like specific thing, but you know, the things are not working together, you know, like that type of stuff. It could be, you know, we have a great locker room, you know, I can tell you that. Like we talk, we just couldn't make that transition from locker room to the court, which is, you know, it's big difference, you know, because when we step on the court, maybe we are too competitive with each other, you know. We are trying to compete too much, you know. Not in other way, you compete and help, you know, in that type of way. So, which is part of experience for everyone, you know. I'm sure. I mean, if you talk with other guys, there is nobody happy, right? So, okay, I don't want to be in this situation next year. I don't want to be unhappy at the end of the year. So I think it's a good experience for everyone.
So for you, how was the season? Obviously, it didn't end how you guys wanted it, but for you personally and as a team, just how did it go for you?
I mean, for me, I'm a team first guy, so you know, individually, I think it was okay. I can always be better. You know, just as a team, I feel like it just, you know, it wasn't what we wanted, what we expected, and that's just that.
what do you feel like maybe was missing as a team that it didn't get to where you wanted it to be?
Consistency before the injuries, and then the injuries was the biggest one.
How do you, speaking of the injuries, not using them as an excuse, but how can you explain the value of like lineup continuity and how important that is?
Say that again, I didn't hear you in the beginning.
How can you explain the value of just having the same lineup out there night in and night out with all the injuries you guys have had, like without using it as an excuse? Like how valuable is that to a team to have say 5-10 guys out there?
I mean, it's really important you build chemistry, you know, and that's where the consistency come from. You know, when there's new lineups, it's just hard to build chemistry that way. So, you know, at the end of the day, like I said, I'm not somebody to make excuses. So, you know, whoever's healthy, who's ever out there ready to compete at a high level is, you know, who you go out and practice with and get ready for games with. So, you know, but obviously, you know, in this league to, you know, win at a high level, I feel like you have to be healthy and you have to be consistent.
And just talking to Wesley, he mentioned how throughout the year he could see different guys stepping up as leaders and everything like that. Just for you, what did you observe throughout this season as far as guys kind of owning a leadership role in different ways?
I mean, I just try to show up to work and, you know, be myself and lead by example. You know, I can't really speak on this guy's a leader, that guy's a leader. You know, but at the end of the day, it's a great group of guys. You know, like I said in the past, all the way to now, you come in here and you see a bunch of guys working on their game, wanting to get better, trying to learn and, you know, just deal with what we could deal with. You know, and like I said, at the end of the day, you know, it is what it is. You know, you can't make excuses.
Dejounte, when you look back over the entire season, was this one an enjoyable one for you, even though you guys obviously don't reach where you want to be?
Enjoyable? Not enjoyable. A lot of ups and downs. You could say a lot of good moments, bad moments, but you know, I think if you're not going to the playoffs, it shouldn't be enjoyable. And I just, you know, how passionate I am and wanting to win and willing to do whatever to win.
Was there kind of maybe a discussion among the players after that play-in game just about kind of how the season went or anything like that as a team?
No.
It looked like Garrison took big steps for his NBA future this season. What did you see from him over the course of the year trying to step into that kind of role?
I mean, number one, he's a great person. I love him a lot, just the person he is. And his work ethic speaks for itself. You know, every morning he's in here. He practice. After practice, you know, he's in the gym. You know, he's in the weight room, handling himself, taking care of himself, and he's available. You know, so a guy like that is just, I'm just happy to see somebody like that get the success that he was getting over the course of the season. And I think he made a name for himself, you know, and I hope he, whether it's here or wherever it's at, I hope, you know, somebody give him his worth, you know, and he gets a bunch of guaranteed years in NBA because he deserves to, you know, be a guy in the rotation on the team.
Dejounte, when you guys have, you know, some high goals at the beginning of the season to make it to the playoffs and just experiencing the reality of it, what is the hardest part of like trying to stack up what you want to do versus what is actually going on?
I mean, you can't without consistency and being healthy. I think it's that simple. You know, you're not consistent and you're not healthy. Those are two bad mixes to have, you know, in such a competitive sport, especially in the NBA.
What do you go into the summer focused on for you as far as how do you approach it, trying to what you focus on, just preparing for next year?
For me, I try to keep the same approach, you know, especially on the basketball court. I never limit myself. I always try to continue to get better and grow as a player. And then outside of that, you know, I want to become real, like stronger, you know, stronger than I ever been before. So, you know, with just the nutrition, diet thing, even though I eat right, but just tuning it up even more and in the weight room even more, working on what I really need to work on, you know, and just trying to take everything to another level. That's just, you know, who I am. Each and every year, I try to approach it the same way, but even better. So that's pretty much it.
Realistically, just how much time do you just take away from basketball before you pick it up again?
I mean, I could probably take away 3 weeks, but I'll get in the weight room before that. I actually fell in love with starting to lift, so it's just hard in the season to do it every day. You know, you're always on the go, always on the move, so you know, basketball will probably take 3-4 weeks before I start going hard in it, and other than that, I'll be starting lifting probably in a week.
What made you fall in love with it? Was there like a moment or something that you noticed a difference just in your game by lifting more, or?
I mean, when I got hurt a few years ago, I got to learn about my body and the importance of all the agility stuff in the lifting. You know, it allows you to be available, you know, like I am. It limits injuries, and which the proof been that since I've been hurt, and I've been able to be available. And I think it wasn't just, I'm eating the right foods or, I'm working on my basketball game. It starts in there, the treatment tables and then the weight room.
How do you think you were just able to grow this season, just having a full year under Quin Snyder this year?
I mean, I've always said it, he's a great coach. I love him as a person, a coach. It wasn't fair for him. I feel like, he didn't have a healthy group. And it's just like, I don't know what you expect, when you got guys in and out of lineup and you just happen to basically switch your game plan, each and every game or, weeks at a time, whatever. So, like I said, I think he's a great coach. I love him. He knows I love him, and I love playing for him.